It started in the parking lot of a downtown cafe just before noon. The sun was blazing overhead, the sidewalk humming with the buzz of the lunch crowd. I was standing outside my car, double-checking a text before heading in. That's when I saw it. A woman, mid-30s, sharp blue blazer, braided hair pulled back neatly, was walking toward the entrance of the cafe. She was carrying a laptop bag and a coffee in one hand, likely headed for a meeting. Suddenly, a loud voice barked from behind her. "Hey! You dropped something." She turned, puzzled, and that's when the man stepped closer. A uniformed officer, badge shining in the sun, closed the distance between them far too quickly. She barely had time to respond before he reached out and yanked her by the hair. People around froze. Her coffee hit the pavement. "What the hell?" she shouted, staggering backward, pain and shock in her voice. The officer, balding, mid-40s, with the kind of posture that screamed authority, snapped, "You match a description. Don't move." She didn't move, but someone else did. From across the street, a tall man in a gray suit was already crossing, his steps fast and firm. I hadn't even noticed him at first, but his energy shifted the entire atmosphere. Something about him, the way others instinctively gave him room, hinted this wasn't just a bystander. He reached them just as a small crowd had started to form. The woman was holding her scalp with one hand, still in disbelief. The officer looked ready to cuff her. "Let go of her," the man in the suit said. Calm, but with a sharp edge. The officer turned. "This is official business. Step aside, sir." That's when everything changed. The man pulled a card from his jacket pocket and held it up. "You're going to regret those 3 minutes." The officer squinted at the card, then scoffed. "I don't care who you think you are. She matches a bolo. Step away before I detain you too." The man in the suit didn't flinch. "Your bolo doesn't give you the right to grab a civilian by the hair," he replied, his voice razor-sharp but composed. "I suggest you step back and radio your supervisor. Right now." The officer's face turned red, not from heat, but from a rising mix of anger and panic. He hadn't expected resistance, especially not from someone dressed like that, speaking with that tone of unshaken confidence. I said, "Stand down." The man flipped his card around. This time, the badge beneath the leather glinted just as bright, but it wasn't a local one. It was federal. Gasps rippled through the small crowd that had gathered. Cell phones were out. Recordings had already begun. The woman, still stunned, blinked at the stranger who had appeared seemingly out of nowhere to intervene. The officer hesitated, eyes darting between the badge, the cameras, and the woman still rubbing her scalp. "Your actions have been recorded," the suited man continued, stepping between the officer and the woman. "Physical force, unjustified contact, failure to identify properly. This isn't going away." Then, with calm precision, he reached for his phone and made a call. "This is Agent Carter. I need internal affairs at my location, yes, now. We have a situation involving use of force on a non-detained civilian." The officer backed up slightly, now visibly sweating. "I didn't know," he started. "You didn't care," Agent Carter cut in coldly. The woman finally found her voice. "Thank you," she whispered to Carter. He turned to her, his expression softening. "You don't owe me thanks. But you do deserve justice." Within minutes, the scene had completely shifted. What began as a humiliating public grab had transformed into something else, something bigger. The officer now stood off to the side, his posture deflated. His authority, once used so casually, seemed to evaporate under the weight of federal scrutiny and the eyes of dozens now watching, recording, judging. Agent Carter kept the phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, I'll remain on site until they arrive. She's safe now." The officer. "Still here." "Yes, the footage is being collected." He hung up and turned toward the woman. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Leah," she said. "Leah Grant." "Ms. Grant, I'm going to make sure this incident is fully investigated. But you need to be medically evaluated first. We have a team en route who'll walk you through the process. You're not alone in this." Leah looked like she wanted to hold it all together, but her composure was starting to crack. Her voice trembled as she nodded. "He didn't say anything. He just grabbed me. Like I was some thing." Carter gave a small, but reassuring nod. "And that's exactly why he won't be walking away from this. Not this time." A marked SUV arrived seconds later, lights flashing, internal affairs. Two plainclothes officers stepped out and made a beeline for Carter. They exchanged clipped greetings before Carter gestured toward the officer in question. He yanked her by the hair in front of at least 15 witnesses, on no legal grounds. Claimed she matched a bolo, but never verified ID or used protocol. "Everything's been caught on camera. I want his badge, and I want it now." The officer tried to speak. "It was a mistake, I didn't mean," but no one wanted to hear it anymore. One of the internal affairs officers walked right up to him. "You're done for today. Hand it over." The badge came off his chest slowly. His hand trembled. The weight of those 3 minutes had finally landed. The moment the officer's badge hit the palm of the internal affairs agent, the energy in the air changed completely. The crowd had gone silent, not out of disinterest, but out of awe. Everyone felt it, something rare had just happened. A man who once believed he could act without consequence was now being held accountable, and fast. The officer stood there, stunned. "I've served 15 years, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. One of the IA agents didn't even look at him. "Then you should have known better." As they guided him toward the unmarked car, cameras followed every second. No cuffs, yet, but the look on his face was worse than restraint, it was realization. He knew his career wasn't just on the line. It was already slipping away. Agent Carter turned back to Leah. A medic had arrived and was gently examining her scalp, noting signs of stress and tension where her hair had been pulled. "We'll make sure you have access to all the footage and witness statements," Carter said. "You'll be contacted soon about pressing charges, if that's the path you choose." Leah nodded, but there was a tightness in her throat. I didn't think anyone would step in. Not like that." Carter gave a small smile. "Too many people don't. But I've seen enough to know silence is dangerous." A woman in the crowd stepped forward, phone in hand. "I recorded the whole thing," she said to Leah. "If you need it, it's yours." Others followed. One by one, strangers became allies. Evidence wasn't just being captured, it was being shared. Willingly. Openly. And as the IA vehicle drove off with the now suspended officer in the back seat, the weight of accountability hung in the air like a storm had just passed. Leah stood straighter. 3 minutes had changed everything. Later that week, the story broke wide open. Local news ran it first, officer suspended after aggressive misidentification incident caught on camera, but within hours, national outlets picked it up. The footage from bystanders had gone viral. People weren't just watching it, they were reacting. Sharing. Demanding change. Leah Grant became a symbol, not by choice, but by circumstance. She wasn't an activist, not a politician. She was a woman heading to a meeting, now thrust into the public spotlight because someone thought a badge gave them immunity. But what stood out most in the coverage wasn't the violence. It was the moment Agent Carter stepped in. The moment someone said no, not today, not again. A week after the incident, Leah stood at a podium in a packed auditorium. The city had asked her to speak at a community safety forum. Her voice trembled at first, but the room quieted as she found her footing. "I didn't ask to become a headline," she said. "But I know too many people who've been treated like they don't matter. Who didn't have someone show up. I'm lucky. Because someone did. Carter stood at the back of the room, hands folded. He didn't wear his badge that day. He didn't need to. The people around him knew who he was. Outside the building, murals had begun appearing across town. Not of violence, but of strength. One showed Leah standing tall, hand raised. Another depicted the moment Carter held out his ID, calm, deliberate, unshaken. The officer who yanked her hair. He faced multiple charges now. Excessive force. Civil rights violations. And a department review that sparked sweeping new policies on use of force accountability. Some said it was justice. Others said it was just a start. But for Leah, it meant something personal. I got to walk away with my dignity, she said in an interview. Because someone made sure he didn't walk away with impunity. And just like that, the badge couldn't save him. 2 weeks after the incident, Leah's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something told her to pick up. A firm voice came through the line. Ms. Grant. This is Director Elena Morris, Office of Professional Accountability. Leah sat up straighter. Yes, I'm here. I wanted to inform you personally, Director Morris said, that the officer involved in your case has officially been terminated. Following the investigation, we found a pattern of prior complaints that had been ignored. That will no longer be the case moving forward. Leah didn't respond at first. She just breathed. I also wanted you to know, Morris continued, we're creating a civilian oversight advisory board. We'd like you to consider being part of it. Leah blinked, stunned. Me? You, Morris confirmed. You've already started a conversation in this city we can't afford to let die. That afternoon, Leah walked past the cafe where everything happened. The chalk outline where her spilled coffee had once stained the sidewalk was long gone. But the memory wasn't. She looked around, and realized she wasn't invisible anymore. Agent Carter had texted her the day before, let me know if you ever need backup again. Not just in the field. That message echoed louder than any courtroom verdict. This time, justice didn't come in handcuffs. It came in reform. In phone calls. In policies rewritten. In voices that refused to be silenced. Leah looked up at the clear sky, the same one that had once watched her be yanked like a criminal. Now it watched her stand tall. 3 months later, Leah sat behind a table draped in a navy cloth with the city seal printed on the front. It was her first official meeting as part of the newly formed Civilian Oversight Advisory Board. Cameras lined the back of the room. Reporters scribbled. But she wasn't nervous. Not anymore. She glanced around the chamber, at the diverse faces of the board beside her. Teachers. Veterans. Nurses. Retired judges. Everyday citizens with one thing in common, they were here to make sure no one with a badge could ever bypass accountability again. As the meeting opened, the mayor stepped to the podium. Today is not about punishment, he said. It's about protection. It's about people like Ms. Leah Grant, who turned a moment of harm into a movement for change. Applause filled the room. Later, during a break, Agent Carter approached her quietly from the crowd. You sure you're ready for all this? He asked. Leah smiled. Wasn't ready the day it happened, either. Didn't stop me then. He nodded approvingly. This city's lucky you picked up that phone. She looked back at the chamber doors. It's not luck. It's what happens when the right people finally get heard. Outside, the city moved as always, buses screeched, heels clicked, sirens echoed in the distance. But something felt different now. There was no mural or statue. No parade. Just a black woman who refused to shrink in a system that finally had to look her in the eye. And though the officer's badge hadn't saved him that day, Leah's voice had saved many after. 6 months to the day after it happened, Leah returned to the spot where everything changed. She didn't come for drama. She didn't bring cameras. Just a quiet walk, a coffee in hand, this time one that wouldn't be spilled by force. The cafe had added new outdoor seating since then. A small plaque on the brick wall nearby read, "To those who stood, when silence was easier." It wasn't officially about her. But everyone in the city knew the story. People glanced up from their laptops as she passed, a few offering respectful nods, one even whispering, "Thank you." That part still felt strange. She sat down at a corner table, letting the breeze rustle the edge of her notebook. Inside, pages of notes, ideas for new board policies, testimonials from community members, even quotes she found inspiring. But tucked in the very front was a folded piece of paper she hadn't moved since that day. Agent Carter's business card. On the back, a handwritten note, "Real change doesn't knock. It pushes back." As Leah sipped her coffee, a young woman approached. "Excuse me," she said softly, "I just wanted to say, what you did. What you're doing. It matters. I used to think no one ever got held accountable. But you proved that wrong." Leah nodded, her voice steady. "Then prove me right. Stay involved. Keep watching. Keep speaking." The woman smiled, inspired. And with that, Leah returned to her notebook, adding one more line to the top of the next page, "One voice is enough to start the echo." The system had been shaken. The city had changed. And Leah Grant? She was just getting started. Word of what happened to Leah, and how she stood back up, had traveled far beyond her city. Invitations poured in, panels, town halls, podcasts, even a televised interview. She turned most of them down. Not because she didn't care, but because she was focused on the work. On the board. On the people still being overlooked. But one invitation stood out. It came from a police academy 2 states over. A sergeant had written, "We've added your case to our ethics curriculum. But we'd like them to hear it from you." She almost declined. Then she remembered the officer's face, the one who had grabbed her. His certainty. His casualness. How no one stopped him for those first 3 minutes. She accepted. When she stepped into the lecture hall months later, dozens of recruits turned to face her. Some looked unsure. Some were curious. Some defensive. She told them everything. Calmly. Clearly. From the moment she was grabbed to the moment he was stripped of his badge. From the shock, to the silence, to the unexpected hand that reached in and said, "Not today." And then she said this, "You think your badge will protect you. But it doesn't protect you from who you choose to become. Your choices will define you, long before your uniform does." A long silence followed. But this time, it wasn't from denial. It was from reflection. One recruit raised his hand, hesitant. "What happened to the officer?" Leah answered without anger. "He lost his badge. But more importantly, he lost the public's trust. That's something you don't get back." Another asked, "And what happened to you?" Leah smiled. "I stopped being afraid of what people might do to me. And I started making sure they wouldn't do it to the next person." When she walked out of that academy, there was no applause. No fanfare. Just quiet understanding. Sometimes, the loudest echoes are the ones that stay with people long after the room goes silent. A full year had passed. Leah stood once again, this time not in the shadows of trauma, but on the stage of transformation. The city had gathered for the unveiling of a new community initiative, the Grant Protocol, named in her honor. A policy requiring immediate third-party review of all civilian complaints involving force, before they ever touched an internal desk. She hadn't asked for her name to be attached to it. In fact, she resisted. But the board insisted. The people insisted. Because what happened to Leah wasn't just a moment, it became a movement. Agent Carter sat in the front row, dressed in plain clothes again. He gave her a nod as she took the podium. Leah looked out over the sea of faces. Her voice, no longer shaking, filled the hall. 1 year ago, I was grabbed. Not just physically, but by a system that thought I was small enough to handle without care, without due process, without respect. That system met someone it didn't expect, me. And someone else it didn't count on, someone who didn't stay silent. But this isn't about me anymore. It's about every voice that doesn't get heard. Every shove that gets dismissed. Every badge that's been used as a wall instead of a shield. She paused. Let this be the last time a woman has to suffer for a policy to be written. Let it be the last time someone says, I didn't know, and thinks it's a defense. The room rose in applause. Afterward, a young officer approached her quietly. I watched your case from the academy, he said. It changed how I carry my badge. Leah nodded. Then it's already working. As the sun set outside the City Hall building, Leah stepped into the street, free, proud, and stronger than ever. No longer the woman in pain on a sidewalk. Now the woman whose voice rewrote the rules. Her dignity was never theirs to take. But her impact? It would never be forgotten.